Hello, I am Umbrenero and welcome back to Umbrenero's Life. Today's video is my September 2024 plan with me. For this month, my setup is done slightly different compared to how I have normally done it. So first off, you can see I am actually putting color in for my background before I'm drawing a single line, and there is a reason for this. So for September, I am doing a Last of Us themed bullet journal spread. So if you're familiar with the game in any way, you know what the game is about. And I just wanted subtle hints as to the game and some of the elements of the game. So across the top of the first two spread pairs of pages, you see an arm going across. And I put little details in to show something happened. But then you see all these little yellow specks floating around the pages. I had fun with this one. I didn't want it to be a perfect spread, an overly detailed spread, but I wanted to have some fun with it. And that's exactly what I did. Because I ended up coming in with distress ink even and put like a haze of yellow and then a little bit of orange in it later on to kind of give off the effects of the yellow specks floating around on the pages are not what they seem, and that they are not a good thing. Just trying not to spoil the actual game. But as you can see, I ran out of space when I was writing September, so the way I was writing it had to change very quickly near the end, but that happens. And I think this is one of the first times this year that I've been using a more limited color palette, where it's mostly grays and then a couple little pops of color. And I will say right now, October is going to be even less color than this month because of the game I chose for October. So you'll see then what that one is. But nope, after I had all of my layouts done and whatnot, I got to putting my colors into my key, and that was basically it for my cover page here. And I was trying to keep my distress ink from getting on my arm, so that's why for the rest of me working on my cover page here, that is why the paper towel is there, so I don't turn myself bright yellow. But we got to my monthly log, and like I was saying before, there's an item that ends up being on this page that was on the prior page. So across the top of these two sets of pages is an arm, and it has changed slightly onto this page. But before I could even put that in, I had to make a mark of where the center of my page was. Because instead of doing the arm first like I was going to, I decided to put my header in. I don't know why I did it right away. And then I divided my two columns out, drew my lines in. I was doing things completely different than how I did on my monthly page, and I was just having a day doing this. So here I started putting in the color of the arm that has been going across the pages. And one of the things I will say from the game is once someone has caught the infection in the game, you can tell because their skin starts to turn a bit gray. Well, I needed to figure out how to include that, but realized very quickly I grabbed the wrong gray at first, so I just improvised and covered up my mistakes slightly. But I started graying out the skin of the arm because something's not right with this person. But it took me a bit, and I did find the gray I was looking for, so that's a positive. But my monthly log is a simple 2-column thing on a single page. Next is my content plan. Normally that's right before my weekly log, but this month I switched it up and decided I'm bringing this here because I want to keep track of where certain things are a little bit better. And this time, before I drew a single line, I filled in my little background detail because I didn't want to forget it again. So I continued over that little bit of a mark showing something had happened there, gave a little bit of a detail, not much. And then I started putting in some gray to show, hey, this arm is not good at all throughout the whole thing. It's not fully grayed, but there's issues with it. But as for how my content plan is being laid out this month, it's being laid out like it has been the last couple, where I just have a large box that I am putting my stuff in. And depending on my mood when I decide to fill it in is how it's going to end up being. So it could either be 2 vertical columns in the box, like my monthly log, or it could be 2 horizontal sections, like it has been other months. I will determine that when I get to it, because I just wanted to get everything prepped, ready to go, so that way I'm not having to rush when I get closer to September. And of course, I'm not perfect, which is why there's a little tail on the bottom of the page, and it happens. I have no control. But I decided to bring a little bit more of that yellow cloud onto these pages because after this it does disappear. But we get to our goals and things page, which, like the prior pages, is very similar. And this time, I, like I did on a couple of them, put in the arm first, and by now, the arm has actually grayed for the most part. Like, the little bits of normal skin color are gone. And I try to draw a little bit of the details from the game here. Like, from different levels of the monsters from the game, to be fair. And they did not turn out as good as I hoped. But I'm not the best artist, and I've never claimed to be the best, so I drew a little bit of a fungus thing that's growing off of this arm, because in the game it happens. It doesn't happen to the main character, or does it? You'd have to play the game or to find out. See, I've never watched the show, so I don't know if it's any bit accurate to the game. But I went through, did all of this first. And then I finally got to doing my actual line work for this spread for my goals and things page. So it's a simple box for me to just put whatever pops into my brain into. And surprisingly, these are not commonly filled up by the end of the month. It does surprise me in reality. Like, I think of stuff and I forget to write it down, and then I should probably write it down somewhere and then bring it here at the end of the month. That's an idea. I might have to try that. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. So, the next page is my habit tracker. And as you can clearly see, I'm using a darker gray marker here because everything has been infected by this point. And I tried to sketch in some of the fungus, how it would look from different monsters in the game, and just trying to bring some elements in a little bit of detail without being overly detailed in it. But for my habit tracker, I decided I wanted to do something a little bit different than I've done before this year, which is I have the habits that I'm tracking. You don't see them on the screen yet, but I have them spaced out evenly. And instead of just making a box or drawing a box or random shapes, I decided to number 1 to 30 between 2 lines. And I'm actually going to take a dotting marker I have, and I'm going to dot each day whether I did this or whether I did not do it. So I have the colors set to the side, I just haven't made note of which is for what. But I have 5 main habits that I'm trying to keep track of, and we'll see how that goes. I could also make it be that one color is I barely reached my goal, whereas for example, for my journal, I opened it up and marked off that I did something that day. Whereas other days, I did a whole spread. I could do it as a high-low type thing. I'm still debating it, so we'll see by the end of the month of September what I decided to do for it. But now for my weekly log, I decided I wanted very minimal on these because I am doing vertical weekly logs this month. So I started drawing them out evenly spaced throughout both pages of a spread. And looking on camera now, after I've done this and I've done my editing here, I noticed some of the colors I chose for this month do not show up well on camera. But that's something you learn as you're going through it, which is fine. So, as I was drawing out this weekly spread, Wednesday is in the middle of the pages, and I fully know that. So some weeks Wednesday might be a good size. Other weeks it might be larger. It varies depending on the week. And sometimes you just have to go with the flow, and that's what I'm doing here. So this specific weekly log, this is real time. It took me about, I'm trying to think here. About 4 minutes to do this whole setup without without many interruptions. And I also was trying to figure out what order do I want to use my colors and all of that. So for thinking about how long it takes to set up my weekly log, especially a minimal one like this, it took about 25 minutes in total, which isn't so bad. But I was also being very careful to erase my pencil marks so that way I didn't accidentally leave them on the page and all of that, but life happens. So I was here making sure my markers were in the same order as they were on my key, because I kind of wanted to keep that pattern going. And making sure they were in order was a priority at this point. But like I said before, here is where you can really tell that some of these markers don't show up the best on camera. In real life, you can read them a little bit better, so that is a thing that I will point out. And for Wednesdays, I decided that the W was getting split between the two pages, just to make it easier on myself instead of trying to cram it all on one side versus the other. But as you can see from the colors that do show very well, I put the initial for the day of the week on top and the day number on the bottom of the page. And then I repeated that whole process for the rest of the weeks in the month. And yes, this is sped up quite a bit, just to make this go a little bit faster. So right here, I don't know if the shadows are showing as well as they were when I was actually working on this. I could see that Wednesday was a whole cell bigger from here on out for the rest of the month. And you know, sometimes you just roll with the flow, and that's exactly what I was doing here. Because I'm not going to make a big fuss about one little cell difference, especially when I'm trying to get ahead. And in reality, this is what took the longest for my weekly logs this week, was drawing out all of these lines and making sure everything was there where it was needed. So then we go back to following the pattern that I had already decided on and numbering the rest of the week. And since I was doing this all in a specific order, keeping the markers in order made it a lot faster than if I was just throwing them in a pile and then having to search through the grays to find the right one. So at this point, we finally are to. Wow. At this point, we are finally to my reflection. And I didn't want to have to bring so much detail back. So I did like I was doing earlier on. I went back to the very simple, minimal design that I was using. And this time, I put the line work in first, and realized later on I probably should not have done that first, but you live and you learn. But I divided my reflection up into 3 sections. The first for next month, then a section for the good things from September, and then a section for the bad. Yeah, I went back to my simpler reflection of having 3 things that I am looking at for the month instead of answering various questions and all that, but I went simple. And then I'm like, this is kind of missing things, so I brought the arm back just temporarily. And this time I didn't draw any specific details on it because I was just trying to get through getting this taken care of and be done with it. Because sometimes you just have those days. But I got the arm drew in, which by this point is fully grayed. And I did add little details later on of a little bit of the cloud came back. In all, it's a very simple design, but I get the vibes of the game that I was going for the design, which was my goal. So, thank you for watching, and until next time, I am Umbrenero. Bye!